Okay, that's a couple minutes. Time to get started. Hello everyone, welcome to the Microsoft SQL Server 2014 the Microsoft Unified Communication Experience webinar. Today's webinar is sponsored by Tandem Solution. They are an IT training company, and Mirazon, an IT consulting company. My name is Daryl Hunter. I am a solutions architect and I lead our UC and networking practice here at Mirazon. Here's a lovely picture of me. I would show you my face, but a picture will suffice. Since we're all friends, you can now call me DW, like everybody else who knows me well. I've been in IT for a while. I'm a couple decades into my IT career. I hold a number of certifications. A few of them are listed up here if you care about acronym soup. Probably the most relevant ones are the MCITP in Lync and MCSE in communications. Part of my role at Mirazon, leading the communications team, is installing Microsoft products, Microsoft Lync, now Microsoft Skype for Business, a lot of networking work, integrating that inside your enterprise network, and some other voice integration with products like Cisco and Avaya and ShoreTel and Mitel and any other tel company you can think of. Let's jump in. Today's agenda, we are going to talk about Skype for Business. That's why you're here. Thank you for coming. We're going to talk about Office 365. I'll give you a small little demo using my laptop and a Surface Pro right next to me. And then we'll wrap up and answer a bunch of questions that you may have. Throughout the webinar today, I have a couple stopping points where if you have questions in the middle of our session, there should be inside your GoToWebinar control panel a place for you to ask questions, and we'll be able to jump into those here and there. So let's start this way. I always start, some of you that have attended one of my webinars in the past or maybe have attended one of our user group sessions, it's always helpful for me to know kind of what you know. That way I can tailor things. The unfortunate reality of a webinar is I can't see you, but on your GoToWebinar dashboard, there should be a way for you to raise your hand. So we're going to try this and see if we can get this to work today. How many of you have attended a talk about Skype for Business or maybe a previous version of the Microsoft UC stack? Let's see if the hand raising works. And it doesn't. Hello, Mr. Murphy. I'm glad you could join us today. So typically when I talk through this, I like to know who is using the Lync product or the Skype for Business product today. Typically, I get a few hands raised. And probably in the audience today, there's a few of you that use the Microsoft UC product for instant messaging or maybe for some audio conferencing or some web conferencing. Maybe some of you are using it for voice. Maybe your entire PBX replacement. Instead of a green plastic phone or a black plastic phone on your desk that might say ShoreTel or Avaya, maybe instead you're using Lync for headset use as well. So probably the best place to start the conversation for Skype for Business is with instant messaging. So here you go. You ready? Here's your pop quiz. When was the first time instant messaging was commonly in use? On your screen, there should be a poll session for you all to be able to click a button and answer. I think, maybe, I'm getting some answers. Excellent. I'm going to give this a couple more seconds. I like to see what people have to say. This may surprise you a little bit. The first time people started using the concept of sending an instant message was the 1960s. 1960s, there were some shared operating systems. A great example might be Multics. Multics was a system used for phone systems. It was also used for shared computing resources. Instant messages, that is that concept of a pop-up message, really quick and short, to notify users of shared system maintenance. And this grew, right? That's why we're talking about it a little bit today. Through different operating systems like the Unixes of the world, that's a fun word to say, you have little applications like Talk or NTalk or YTalk, which then leads into BBSs. I'm an old school BBSer. Maybe some of you are as well. The 1980s and 1990s were good to me. I had a lot of fun playing with modems and waiting and waiting and waiting to talk to my friends all over the world. Talker is another app, IRC. I know several of you are in the audience today, and we're part of a shared organization, and we use IRC to talk kind of in a back channel, not just at events to make fun of and have shenanigans with all of our friends, but we also use IRC on a daily basis to solve technical problems and to crowdsource IT, because we all know we can't know everything. ICQ is a big one, right? Many of you may remember ICQ. This is a key player in the instant messaging world, and really when things kind of took off. In '96, some really smart kids developed this product that they can talk to each other from computer to computer, anywhere in the world. Then AOL bought it, and it all kind of went downhill from there. But then we'll lead into the 2000s. Jabber, OpenFire, a protocol called XMPP to be able to do instant messaging. And you're probably wondering, since we're talking about Microsoft, yes, of course, Microsoft had a product. One of the larger products you may be familiar with would be the Exchange Instant Messaging Service, which is now defunct. But that leads us well into the, why do I care about IM? Well, you may not, right? Many of us on the webinar today are business professionals, and we'd rather not care about instant messaging. We just want to use our Words and our Excels and our Outlooks to send hundreds of emails and send meetings and do all those things. But whether you like it or not, people in your business, if you are an IT pro, or if you're trying to convince an IT pro that something like Skype for Business is right for you, people are going to use instant messaging platforms. Whether it's Facebook Messenger or Twitter, maybe it's Google Talk or Google Chat. Maybe if you're not in the US, because I know I have a few of you in the audience today that are not in the US, there might be other applications like QQ if you're over in Asia, maybe WeChat, or maybe, of course, you're using the Microsoft UC stack, Lync, Skype for Business, or maybe Skype Consumer. All this is important. We have to figure out how to properly communicate inside of our businesses. Back in the day, Microsoft developed a really great program called NetMeeting. Many of you used it. It is almost 20 years old now. How does that make you feel that this product is almost 20 years old? Microsoft put this standalone program inside Windows 95, I believe it was 95B for you old schoolers. That was a standalone program that you could use to use a webcam and talk to people. Sounds like Star Trek, right? Over the years, Microsoft developed that into a product inside the Exchange email system called Exchange Instant Messaging. And then they had this great idea. What if we took the power of Active Directory, a centralized directory service for centralized authentication, and centralized authentication, I know what your name is, I know your password, let's build a product around communications. So they did. They called it Live Communication Server 2003, which then begat Live Communication Server 2005 with a service pack. And then branding happened. Now we're going to call it Office Communication Server 2007, of course, because everything needs a new name every 3 or 4 years. This is good though, because instead of it just being Live Communication Server, Microsoft really started integrating their products inside the full Office suite with Office 2007. So a brand name made a lot of sense. As these suites have progressed and matured, more and more feature sets have been added. Instant messaging, of course. Presence, the red, yellow, green status to know who is available and who's busy and who's away from their desk. When OCS 2007 R2 hit, there were some really great things that happened. They started adding PBX integration. With OCS 2007 R2 properly configured, and a few other pieces of hardware and software, I can now have my legacy or my on-premises phone system talk with my Microsoft software suite, OCS 2007 R2. I could ring a plastic phone and I could ring a headset at the same time and answer whichever one was the most convenient for me. Today, in 2015, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it was a big deal 6 or 7 years ago. In 2010, the product was rebranded again, Lync Server 2010. When Lync Server 2010 hit, it was a whole new world. Instead of PBX integration with OCS 2007 R2, this is the world of PBX replacement. With Lync 2010, you no longer needed to integrate with an existing on-premise phone system. You can now replace all of your company communications, instant messaging, collaboration, maybe that's web conferencing or audio conferencing, and the phones on your desk or headsets in your ears with a Microsoft stack, surrounded by a Windows server, working on Active Directory, integrating with Exchange Server for unified messaging, voicemail, and auto attendance, using expertise you already have in your staff. You did not have this black box or green box or blue box sitting in a rack that you couldn't touch that was magic. You knew how to use Windows servers and do patches and how to plan for the future. Lync 2013 was a new integration of this product, and until very recently was the latest generation. And now, of course, we have Skype for Business 2015. So as you've noticed, we've had quite a history with Microsoft UC. We've had different names, we've had different brandings, and different version numbers, of course. Skype for Business 2015 is the penultimate of where they're trying to go with this product. If you remember, a few years ago, Microsoft bought Skype Consumer. So with Skype for Business 2015, Microsoft took that next step to fully integrate the consumer line and the business line to bring communication to anybody, anywhere. But you're probably tired of hearing me talk about IM. And I'm tired of talking about IM too, actually. Skype for Business is more than IM. These little 6 squares on your screen are kind of like the high-level points whenever I give this talk, and are the most important things for you to understand just from a high level of what Skype for Business is. Skype for Business is audio conferencing. That doesn't sound too exciting, I understand. But what if you had a product that you're paying a monthly fee for, where you do top-of-hour manager review meetings? What if you're a development house and you have morning scrum meetings? What if you are like us and have dial-in conferencing meetings with customers or our internal sales meeting? Why would you want to use an external product when you can use an integrated product in your already known Active Directory environment? Then step it up a notch. How about we add video? Because sometimes I like to know what you look like. You may not want to know what I look like, but I want to know what you look like. I like to put faces with names. So now, with customers, internally, with prospective business partners, for many of my nonprofit friends that are on board, maybe some overseas work that you might be doing with missions organizations. Now you can talk and see each other and take that webcam experience, maybe in your hand, and turn it around the window so people can see what you're talking about rather than just read it in email or hear you talk about it. Web conferencing is very similar to what we're doing here. We happen to be using the GoToWebinar product today, but much of what we're doing today can also be accomplished natively inside the Skype for Business server product without anything additional. Instant messaging, of course, we talked about that already. And then the crux of the matter, the last 2 squares, telephony and voicemail. I mentioned to you that with Lync 2010 server, Microsoft now has a full PBX replacement, which then got better with Lync 2013, and now it's Skype for Business 2015. So if you want to have a plastic phone on your desk and make and receive phone calls, you can certainly do that. If you want to use a headset and not have a plastic phone, you can do that. But the brilliant part of that is you can do that anywhere in the world. I'll give you a great example. At Mirazon, we've been on Lync since version 2010. We went live in January of 2011. Many of our engineers and some of our account manager folks and some of our office staff never come to the office. They work from their house or Starbucks, or frankly, using Wi-Fi on an airplane. You can jump into Skype for Business server to send instant messages back and forth and still communicate, even in the air. That's amazing. It sounds like I'm not excited about that because I'm trying to hold it down for a webinar, but I'm kind of jumping up and down in the room because anywhere I go, I can communicate with my staff, I can communicate with my teammates, I can communicate with my customers, I can communicate with my family using Skype for Business consumer integration, the Skype for Business server. So let's jump into some of the benefits. Many of you have heard me talk before. You know I like to use 2 phrases. I like to talk about the what, and I like to talk about the so what. Because many of you are probably 15 minutes into this saying, all right, Hunter Boy, so what? Why do I care? Here are some benefits of Skype for Business for you. Skype for Business server can help you control costs. I understand I have a hard time sometimes explaining exactly how to control costs. Some of you may already be on a voice over IP system. You may already be using things like least cost voice routing. But with Skype for Business, for some of you that have legacy phone systems, this will be new to you. You won't have long distance call between organizations because now you can use person-to-person audio. You don't have to get on a plane or get in a car and drive across the city or drive across the state or fly across the world. As I mentioned a couple slides ago, remember, maybe some of you nonprofit friends, you can have full meetings with staff anywhere in the world, hear them, see their pretty faces, share screens with them, collaborate with them. That's what Skype for Business can do for you. You can improve your productivity. Again, this is a soft one, right? With red, yellow, green status, the presence of Skype for Business. And you'll see this in a demo later if that's a foreign word to you. You can find the right person at the right time. I can't tell you how many times I want to know if someone's in their office. So what do? Well, I can get up and I can go walk and look, and maybe their door's shut. Are they really in there because their light's off? Or I can jump inside my Skype for Business, my Skype client, and I can look at their red, yellow, green status to see if they're available or if they're on a call. Or maybe they're a purple icon, which tells me they're out of the office and their door's shut for a reason. Or maybe they're do not disturb, but they put in a social note that tells me, hey guys, I'm busy, interrupt me if you're on fire, or whatever it might be to let me know it's okay to interrupt them. I can have full ad hoc collaboration. At any time, anybody, whether they're inside my organization or outside my organization using federation services, can talk to me through text, audio, video, screen sharing. If you're available, that's super easy. Certainly, we can schedule a meeting. We can all show up at the appropriate time and jump in and spend a few minutes, just like today, getting ready and waiting for the late stragglers. Or we can do that in real time, whenever it's the most convenient for both of us, or all of us, as the case may be. When it comes for voice services, I wrote in here, find me anywhere. Sometimes people call that find me, follow me. Other times people call that single number reach. So in the phone service side, if I'm using Skype for Business as my phone system, as my PBX replacement, I can now have anybody that calls my number at the same time simultaneously ring my cell phone or my parents' house, or instead forward all those calls maybe to my backup. Maybe I'm on vacation and I don't want them to go to my voicemail and get stuck until I get back. The feature sets to improve my productivity, but yet also improve business productivity for those trying to get a hold of me is built in natively to the product. Skype for Business supports the mobile workforce. I love saying this. Any internet connection, no VPN required. That's a big deal. I don't know for sure if you understand that, so let me repeat that. Any internet connection, no VPN required. Skype for Business Server is a secure product. It runs using TLS. It runs using SSL certificates. In fact, I can't turn the secure services off. If I attempt to, the services don't start and I can't use the product. That should make you feel good to understand I don't need VPN. There's a server product along with this called the Edge server, a server role, that allows me from the airplane or from my house or Starbucks or now federation services from business to business to securely communicate into my secure private organization. It's pretty amazing. I write on here single user experience across PCs, Mac, mobile devices, across browsers. And that is true. But like with anything else in technology, there's always those little caveats. Many of you have probably noticed in recent versions of Firefox and Chrome, they've started turning off in-papping or disabling in-papping. What is in-papping, Daryl? It's a great question. It's an acronym. I'm sure it stands for something super important. I can't tell you what it stands for. But I can tell you what that does is that certain plugins like Flash or Silverlight have a hard time loading inside those browsers. So even though, yes, a single user experience can join in the Skype for Business product across browsers, like a good consultant, I have to say, it depends on what version of the browser you're running. Federation services, you heard me use this word. It's just a fancy word that means communicate together. B2B federation means, look at all those fun acronyms. Skype for Business to Skype for Business, or Lync to Skype for Business, or Lync to Lync, or Lync and Skype for Business to XMPP like Jabber, for example, maybe WebEx Connect if you're still using WebEx Connect, or maybe Jabber OpenFire. Business to business, we can add each other to our contact lists. We can see each other's presence. We can securely communicate across organizations. That's crazy. I work for Mirazon. We're a consulting firm. Part of my role as our networking practice lead is I spend a lot of time working with our networking vendors. I don't always have time to coordinate schedules. I don't always have time to send meeting requests and send emails. Sometimes I need to know the answer right now. So I have many of our partners on my contact list, and I can see whether they're red, yellow, or green status. And if they're green available, they are fresh meat for me. I'm going to ask them questions. I'm going to see if they're available. Sometimes they can say no, and that's okay. At the same time, though, we as Mirazon are openly federated, which means if any of you in the audience have Lync or Skype for Business, and you can figure out my super secretive Lync Skype for Business SIP URI, you can add me to your contact list, and you can ask me questions. With Lync 2013, and now better with Skype for Business 2015, there's now integration with Skype Consumer. With Lync Server 2013, certainly, yes, I could add Skype Consumer contacts to my contact list and communicate to them in different ways. There's a really convoluted way to add them to my address list, to my contact list. But now with Skype for Business 2015, I can search the Skype Consumer directory. I don't have to know a special way to add them. I can start typing their name and it finds them. And I'll show you that in a demo later. So now you on your side might be on Skype, or maybe your business partner, or maybe your missionary partner overseas can be on their Skype Consumer client. And I can be on Skype for Business, or you can be on Skype for Business. And you can talk back and forth without having to install the appropriate other side client. It makes it easy for everybody. And for those of you on here that are more security conscious, I looked through the list of who is coming. I know several of you are in a C-level role. I know we have some financial people here. I know we have some government organizations here. You're probably wanting to know, tell me about regulations. Well, as I mentioned, out of the box, Skype for Business Server has built-in default encryption, SSL certificates, running TLS, SHA-256 if that means something to you. I can't turn it off. My communications, my instant messages, my conferences are secure. They are encrypted along the way. I have to put the disclaimer in here, otherwise you guys are going to laugh me out of the room. There's always a 14-year-old kid smarter than you. Your mileage may vary. Choose wisely. The next bullet point down is archiving. Because it could be that you need to keep track of all messages inside your environment. Maybe you have a retention policy, not just for email, but it could be your organization has a retention policy, an e-retention policy for instant messages or conferences. Out of the box, Skype for Business Server supports that. You can archive messages inside SQL Server. Of course, SQL Server would make sense, right? Because we're talking about the Microsoft UC stack. When you need to pull those messages back, there are simple ways to export those and then deliver them to whoever needs to have access to those. On here, I also put CDR, call detailed records. There's so many more things I could put on there, but CDR seems like a good one to put on there because you might want to know who's calling who and why and how long do they talk. And are they talking every single day? Are there some ethical walls I need to deal with here? Is my financial people talking to their family maybe about some upcoming legislation that might affect them? That's important for me to know. And all that call detailed record information is inside the monitoring service. And I'll give you a brief glimpse at that as well when we do our demo. Let's jump into some high availability disaster recovery discussion. I know we're shifting gears, but this is important for you to know. I get this question a lot. So, Daryl, Skype for Business, I want it. How highly available is it? Well, it depends on how you architect it. Standard Edition has no high availability, 0. You can do disaster recovery. There's a really great technology called pool pairing, and you can have 2 Skype for Business server environments inside your one topology that can fail over to each other. Yes, inside your environment, you may have highly available virtualization, whether that's VMware or Hyper-V, and highly available storage, but at the application layer, Standard Edition cannot be highly available in and of itself. That's when you want Enterprise Edition. To build Enterprise Edition and make it highly available, you build a pool. You build a pool with at least 3 members for best practices. There's a fabric underneath all of this. It's a bunch of technical mumbo jumbo, too much for today to talk about. 3 members is the starting point, and you can grow that up to many. As a SQL Server backend, your pool should not cross or span physical sites. That is an unsupported configuration. So if you're thinking, you know, I'm an okay organization, I've got 2 data centers, I'll put a couple members of my pool here and a couple there. No, you're going to build 2 pools, one in this site and one in that site for supportability reasons. And then for disaster recovery, you can then also implement pool pairing just like with Standard Edition. The server license cost is the same. It depends on the architecture and how you implement it. This is different. In Lync 2010, there was a Standard Edition product and an Enterprise Edition product. They had different price points. That is not the case with Lync Server 2013 and then now continuing forward with Skype for Business 2015. So let's talk through some cost. People kind of are curious about what that looks like, right? So there's Skype for Business 2015 server itself. And of course, like good Microsoft consumers, you're going to buy software assurance. Software assurance does 2 things. It's important for us to talk about that, and you may not be aware of this. Software assurance gives you upgrade rights. I think many of you probably know that. Upgrade rights are what allow you to install the latest version of the software product when it comes out, as long as your software assurance is active. But more importantly, for many of you in a virtualized environment, Skype for Business Server 2015 with software assurance now gives you virtualization rights. If you're running a VMware cluster or a Hyper-V cluster, and you use vMotion or live migration, and you move this application load from host to host, you need software assurance for that. Otherwise, you are technically out of licensing compliance. Boo, none of you want to be there. Other products that are part of the cost discussion are the CALs. There are 3 levels of CALs, client access licenses. You have standard, which is instant messaging and presence. There's also an enterprise CAL that gives you conferencing abilities. And there's a plus CAL that gives you dial tone capability, the actual ability to make and receive phone calls, real phone calls to cell phones and from other businesses. Again, software assurance applies here as well for licensing upgrade rights. There's a client, because there has to be some software package you run to make this work. That product is included with Office Pro Plus. Yes, you're probably saying, yes, it's included with Office 365 too, but you see, you're getting ahead of me because Office 365 is upcoming, and we'll talk about it there as well. There's also an Exchange Enterprise CAL required for unified messaging, the voicemail feature set. Each of these CALs I've mentioned are additive. And I understand that sometimes CALs are one of those like deep, dark topics that you don't really want to talk about. You just want to talk about the technology. But you also want to be a smart consumer. You want to make sure you understand your return on investment. You want to understand your total cost of ownership, because every product has some level of licensing involved. The question is, where do you hide it inside the bill of material? This slide in front of you is how that product is licensed in a Microsoft Skype for Business perspective. There are several other moving parts, of course. So you're probably wondering what goes into that kind of architecture. We'll go as quickly as we can because this is, again, a high-level webinar. Of course, there's IP addresses. That sounds like a no-brainer, but it's important to know there are public IPs involved here. You need to have at least 2, preferably at least 4. If you're doing some public-based SIP trunk provider, at least 5, before you even start talking about high availability or disaster recovery. There are firewall rules. We have to make sure that we can securely handle all of this coming in, inbound port forwarding and outbound NAT presentation. There is a reverse proxy. Reverse proxy is required for web services. There are many web services involved here, like address book expansion, joining a conference as a web service. In fact, if you use your iPhone or Android or Windows phone to use the Skype for Business product, that mobility workload is a web service. A reverse proxy is what allows that to happen. Then you have your topology with your servers, and then a whole bunch of other new things. I'm going to flip through them really quickly. If you're using full enterprise voice, the modality described for PBX replacement. A session border controller is what plugs in your phone service and then securely communicates back to Skype for Business. Exchange Unified Messaging is for voicemail and auto attendance. Thank you for calling. If you know your party's extension, you may dial it at any time. And then, of course, handsets and headsets. If you're using enterprise voice, you don't want to use your built-in speakers and microphone. You want some better device for that, whether it's a plastic phone or whether it's a headset on your head. Or if you're not using enterprise voice and you just want a better audio experience, there are a large number of devices through the Microsoft partner community that are available to do this for you. So let's look at it. Here's a reference architecture. Isn't it pretty? I can hear you now going ooh, ah on the screen. This is a reference topology for a small organization. On the left side, you've got the edge. You've got a firewall going into a DMZ for your edge server and your reverse proxy, going through another firewall, because technically with good security, you're going to have an external DMZ and an internal DMZ, and I'm sure you all have that, right? Then you have your standard edition servers. I mentioned pool pairing. You have Office Web App Server for things like PowerPoint streaming and OneNote integration. You got Exchange UM, and potentially, maybe you have a branch site that needs to have some level of survivability to make outbound 911 calls in an emergency in case a backhoe operator decides to cut the fiber in front of your building. I'm sure that sounds familiar, right? But it could also grow from here. Maybe you're a slightly bigger organization and you're running a front-end pool that's enterprise pool, like I mentioned before. Maybe you're running a SQL mirror on the back end. Maybe you have multiple branch sites. This would be a reference topology for maybe a slightly larger organization. Or maybe you're big. Maybe you're a large organization. On the left-hand side, this might look like multiple sites. Maybe you have data center A and data center B, and then you have all these various branch sites, 1, 2, 3, 4 N branch sites. And it could be then you have a DR site. Maybe you partner with a DR location, and you need to have some level of methodology to have your Skype for Business services in case of major disaster. Then on the right-hand side, this might be a more blown-up version, a detailed version of what that central site A looks like. And then you can imagine for yourselves what this looks like for central site B, in the branch sites, and potentially central site C. I don't want to go into this a whole lot. I just wanted to make sure you understand that Skype for Business is for you. It doesn't matter if you're a small organization or a giant enterprise organization. Skype for Business server has a place in your organization, and I'd love to help you talk about what that looks like. So we're going to shift topics a little bit. I'd like to wrap up here with Skype for Business. We're going to jump into Office 365. So you have some questions and some chat in the window. If there's things that you'd like to talk about or discuss we've not gotten to yet, I'll give you a minute to write those in there. I'll do my best to answer them. And we'll also have a Q&A session at the end. Excellent. So I've got a few questions in there. Thank you for telling me what MPAPI means. I'm glad that you know the answer. I certainly don't. And I understand that there might be one of you, maybe more of you, that have some weird connection issues. I'm sorry. I wish I could resolve that for you. I do have a licensing question in here for Office 365. I'm going to hold your question if you don't mind. I'm going to get to licensing really quickly with Office 365. I hope it's okay if I put you off for a minute, but I think I want to answer your question here in just a couple slides. And maybe one more. Has anything changed in regard to SIP integration with Lync 2010? Anything changed with setting up SIP integration? I don't think anything's changed. That's kind of a hard question. I would ask a lot more context. So are you asking about SIP integration from Lync 2010 to other Lync products? I'll give you a second to type back. Yeah, and if we can't get to that on this particular Q&A, at the very last slide, I've got my email address and my super secret Lync federated address in case you wanted to add me, and we can talk from there as well. Let's jump in. We're about halfway through this webinar, and luckily we're about halfway through my slides. Look at that. Let's talk through Office 365. Office 365 is a giant topic, and I cannot answer everything related to Office 365. But these are the typical questions I get. People want to talk about interoperability. They want to talk through how to transition from on-premises to online. And they want to talk about licensing. I know I have a licensing question inside there that hopefully I'll get to here soon. Interop. So there are many ways to interop your on-premises environment to Office 365. One of the first things you probably want to do is get your usernames available. You want to make sure you can authenticate using services. For example, it might be that you want to move your email from on-premises Exchange to Exchange Online. So you have to have some way to populate now that username and potentially share that same password so you don't have to have two passwords written down on sticky notes under your keyboard. I know who you are. You're on here now. So ADFS is one way to do that. Active Directory Federation Services. Honestly, I've not used ADFS a whole lot. ADFS has uptime dependencies. These aren't necessarily a bad thing, but they could be. For you to properly integrate Office 365 using ADFS for authentication services, you have to build proxy services and ADFS services. And technically, when you log in and authenticate through Office 365 online services, it proxies that authentication, your username and password, through an on-premises inside your organization environment. So what happens if your network's down? How do you check your email? You can't authenticate. So that's why they want you to build large, highly available authentication services, but you're probably wanting to simplify your on-premises environment and move services online, maybe to reduce compute, maybe to reduce memory, reduce disk space, maybe because you just don't want to hassle with it. So another product might be directory sync, password sync. I think a current version of this are calling AD Connect. This has kind of been a moving target in the last few years. I've sat through session after session of people like me talking to people like you, and it's confusing, and I know it is, and I wish it wasn't. The premise is to be able to take your Active Directory services, users by OU, or maybe all users, populate Office 365, and then brilliantly synchronize that password. The advantage to this over ADFS is now if your on-premises environment goes down, you can still authenticate to services in online Office 365. Of course, your on-premises services are down, but your online services are still available. So now you need to think through at an architectural level what lives on-prem versus what lives online. Hybrid Exchange, having some Exchange online and some Exchange on-premises is awesome. It's flexible. You should do it. That sounds like a blanket statement, but it kind of is. It's a great product. It's really secure. I think you should look into it. So if you're going to do Lync, Skype for Business, Voice on premises, and Exchange Online for unified messaging, here's the must. You must have some method of same sign-on, whether it's ADFS or directory sync, for all of this to work properly. I could quote you chapter and verse, but I'd probably get it wrong. I just know you must, and I've sat in many webinars like this at Lync Conference and at Ignite and through webinars and IRC chats. The answer is must. Smart people said it. I believe it. So some options. Skype for Business 2015 on-premises and Exchange Online. Yep, fully compatible. Skype for 2015 on-premises and Exchange Hybrid. Some on-premises and Exchange Online. Yep, fully compatible. Do you see the pattern? Exchange Online, Office 365, and an on-premises PBX that's not Lync or Skype for Business. It works, but it may not be supported. See, here's that kind of rub. There's a lot of things. Remember I mentioned that really smart 14-year-old? There's a lot of things that technically are possible, but you may not want to get yourself into this gray area, maybe not so gray area, of supportability. I'll give you a Cisco example. It might be a little easier to see. You have an on-premises PBX. You have the Microsoft Data Center, Exchange Online. This is an older slide, and this is an older picture, so for those of you that are up to date on the latest pictures, please forgive me. And you want to have some way to communicate securely from on-premises to online. The way to do that, again, is SSL certificates, TLS, and a session border controller to be able to properly proxy and mediate. This is an ugly whiteboard drawing. I hope you can see it well. In fact, the customer that did this signed up for this webinar, and they may be here right now. I'll walk you through it briefly, and then we'll move on. I'm happy to discuss this at a greater depth. I've done this exact implementation at several places. There's a white paper on Mirazon.com on our blog. You can download this should you choose to want to know more about this. The concept is, this is a customer that runs Cisco Call Manager. They've run it for a very long time. They've got 20 or so locations around the US, and they like their Cisco Call Manager, but they may potentially want to move to Lync or Skype for Business Voice in the future. They do not use Unity for voicemail. They did, but they moved to Exchange for voicemail on premises years ago. Now they want to move that Exchange workload online. Does this sound familiar? You're probably thinking through similar things, right? How do I migrate and how do I plan for the future? So they came to us and wanted to know, how can we keep Cisco for our voice? How do we keep Exchange, but now go to Exchange Online for our voicemail and tie all that together? And that's what this really ugly whiteboard drawing is. From the left side is PSTN. That's the voice call coming in through their SIP trunk provider to their Cisco router, which is a voice gateway for Cisco Call Manager. It goes to Call Manager, and then it makes a decision. It tries to ring a green plastic phone. If you can't ring that green plastic phone, it goes to voicemail. Well, you have to know how to send that voicemail. Does that voicemail go down to Exchange, or does that go to the right to Exchange Online? To facilitate that inside Cisco Call Manager, there's things called voicemail pilots. It doesn't really matter for today, but there's a way to properly send that traffic down or send it over. All of this is supported. We happen to use, in this case, a Sonus session border controller. Audio codes works well as well. There may be other vendors that you're familiar with that you can make happen. And I see that customer's here. Hi, Mark. If you dial 0 on either side, of course, it then knows how to migrate back or how to send that traffic back and forth. Likewise, email needs to know how to come in here, go out there, or that super secret voicemail MP3. This is a simple architecture. We can talk about it more in depth should you choose to. So let's talk to migration. You can go long-term hybrid, right? Hybrid is perfectly supported. You can keep yourself hybrid for quite a long time should you choose. You can stage migration. You can stage files up and then migrate them over using tools built into the product. You can cut over. Maybe you just want to do a hard cut over. We are going to export stuff. I think there's now actually a way that you can ship a seated hard drive depending on versions and licensing and the size of your organization. Office 365D perhaps. There's also third-party products that help with this, like Skykick. Skykick's one of the Microsoft partners that are mentioned on the website, and they help you facilitate this using agents and using their servers as proxy servers to securely pull your email out and push it up to the cloud. Let's jump into licensing. This is one of the questions that I know were asked in the chat session, so I'm going to go over it now. Inside our audience today, we have typical business organization people. We have some government people. I'm not talking government licensing today. I don't know the government license too well, and you guys get super special licensing. But I'm going to talk a little bit with businesses and nonprofits, because we know their licensing models pretty well. You have E1, which I guess now is called E2. That's kind of confusing. But basically, E1 gives you free licensing for nonprofits. If you are a 501c3 nonprofit, or if perhaps you're a church that gets your nonprofit status maybe through your denominational organization at the city or the state or the nation level, you can get this product for free. For businesses, this is $8 a user a month. This doesn't give you any CALs. It doesn't give you Office, the actual Office installed product on your computer. This is a way for you to take advantage of Exchange Online. You can move yourself up to E3. E3 for a nonprofit is $4.50 a month per user. For a typical enterprise, it's $20 a month per user. You can see here that nonprofits are very well liked and taken care of by Microsoft. The cool part about E3 is that your Office 2013 Pro Plus, which of course will become Office 2016 soon, is included. You can do this $12 a la carte per user per month as a business, or $2 for nonprofits. But if you're paying attention and noticing, this is moving away from a capital expense model to an operating expense model. Instead of outlaying large dollars, whether that's every couple years or every 5 years if you choose not to use software assurance, now you can do this at a monthly recurring cost, and you can plan for it. You can plan for that in your budget cycle. Even you nonprofit friends can plan for this because you have to budget whether you want to or not. The unfortunate reality, though, is your budget is not always steady because, again, you have to rely on the generosity of people each week. E3 gives you exchange on-premise CAL equivalencies. So maybe you're in that long-term hybrid model and you don't want to buy current CALs, but instead now you want to OpEx your CAL equivalencies for exchange online for that hybrid model. Yep, you can do that. You also get your Skype for Business on-premises standard and enterprise CAL equivalencies to cover IM, presence, and conferencing. Not the server product, but the CAL equivalencies. But there's not a plus CAL. I mentioned before the plus CAL gives you dial tone. E3 does not give you that CAL equivalency. So that takes us to the next slide, and here's where your exact answer should come, my friend. At least I hope so. If not, I'll answer it later. E4. E4 is all of E3, including your Skype for Business plus CAL equivalency. This is $22 a month per user for enterprise. There is not a comparable nonprofit plan. For you nonprofit friends, E3, nonprofit, but then you have to capitalize your plus CALs. As you know, you can do that through Open Charity, which would be your charity licensing product. You can do that through TechSoup. If you're not familiar with TechSoup, you should go get familiar with it. You can do that through TechSoup at a discounted cost, but TechSoup will only give you licensing up to 50 users, and maybe you're more than that, and you have to use a combination licensing. But E4 gives you all of the client access licenses you need to run a full Skype for Business environment, whether it's on premises even. But it doesn't give you the server licenses. The server licenses are still at play. That's a previous slide I talked through. But the CALs, the client access license equivalencies, are included in the various Office 365 licenses. So for Skype for Business to have full enterprise voice, that is PBX or dial tone, you still have to handle the Skype for Business server license and an on-premise deployment for now. I say now on purpose because dial tone is coming for Skype for Business Online. It's coming via Azure Express Route. There's a bunch of to be determined details. This is on trial now. You can go, if you have an Office 365 tenant, you can sign up and trial what they're calling Cloud PBX. A lot of the details about how that dial tone comes in to Skype for Business Online, and then a lot more details about how to handle quality of service if you have a plastic phone or a headset on premise, but now your PBX dial tone is in the cloud. How do you handle quality of service? Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of those details, but I know they're coming, and I know that Azure Express Route, in case you've never heard that term, is maybe a big part of it, and I'm quite certain that I'll be called upon to sit in and do another webinar to talk through some of those details in the future as they come available. So just like last time, let's wrap up Office 365. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to ask some questions, and I want to scroll through just to double check and make sure I answered your E4 question. Then I'll move on to our next quick topic, and then I'll do a demo because we have about 10 or maybe 15 minutes left before we go over. Joel, I'll definitely get to your question. It might be better if we take this offline, just talk about SIP integration, no problem there. And for Kevin, if I subscribe to Office 365, do I need licensing other than E4? You do. E4 again is the CALs. You'll still have your server licensing. And if you have questions as well, you can email me after the webinar and we can talk through it there. Let's move on. This is one slide talking through the Skype for Business 2015 transition. I'm going to summarize the best I can. This is still somewhat of a moving target, but I think this is going to help you understand that everything I've talked to up to this point is definitely still part of Skype for Business 2015. But Skype for Business 2015 added a few things. For those of you that may have been using the Lync client, you may have noticed in April 2015 that client was reskinned. It has a different user interface that was available that turned your Lync 2013 client into the Skype for Business 2015 client. It didn't install anything new. That is still the Lync 2013 client. It just has a different user interface on top of it. In May of this year, the server availability, Skype for Business Server 2015 came out. The weekend before Ignite. Isn't that interesting timing? The unfortunate part for me is I was traveling the weekend before Ignite, and then I went to Ignite, so I didn't have a chance to play with it. I know, first world problems. This year, Office 2016 is coming out. Office 2016 is going to have a native Skype for Business client, not just a rebranded, reskinned Lync 2013 client. And here is where the rejoicing is starting. I know all of my Mac friends online are waiting for this. By the end of 2015, there's a new Mac client coming out. Yay! Hey, Daryl, is that going to be alpha or beta, or can I play with it right now? I have no idea. I've asked. The Microsoft team is being pretty tight-lipped with it, and that's okay. I think we all know, for those of us that have used this product for a while, that the Lync for Mac 2011 product is definitely not feature complete compared to the Office product. But I'm excited to know by the end of this year at the client level, a new ground-up Mac client is coming. There are certainly some new features, exclamation point. You can now upgrade your pools. Check that out. For those of you that are longtime Microsoft people, you know this, that when new products come out, we'll talk about Exchange as a good example, but then of course LCS and then OCS and then Lync, and then Lync 2010 to 2013, you had to stand up new workloads. You had to build new pools and go through a process by which you transitioned your environment. With Skype for Business 2015, you can take an existing Lync 2013 pool and do an in-place upgrade. That is amazing. Something we've been asking for forever, and it's here. I've done it. It works very well. Of course, there's downtime and there's updates that are required and there's prerequisites, but you can do it, and it's great. There's a new server role. It's called VIS, Video Interoperability Server. Of course, for now, this only really works with Cisco, the Cisco Tandberg type products, the Cisco VTCs, and the ability to get them natively integrated into the product. I've been told that there's going to be more products coming in the future. I have never played with this. I don't have a customer that's using this and all the appropriate pieces and parts to make this work. I'm excited, though, to see what that looks like. The Skype for Business client has an undockable call monitor. That means you can be in a Skype for Business call, minimize your screen, but then yet, just like Skype Consumer, you have this neat little bug, this little dock on the side that allows you to make call controls. That may not sound like too exciting, but that's really exciting for those of us that have used this product for quite a while. There's further enhanced consumer Skype interoperability. I mentioned that you can now search the Skype consumer directory. There's all this cloud PBX coming, dial tone and Skype for Business Online that you can try, like I mentioned before. Skype meeting broadcast, the ability to broadcast to up to 10,000 attenders, kind of like what we're doing right now. Wouldn't that be nice to do natively inside the product? It's there. Azure Express Route, again, TBD. There's a lot more details coming for how to actually get your cloud PBX and on-premise connected. At WPC a couple weeks ago, the Worldwide Partner Conference, the Office team announced there is now going to be a new product called E5. A lot of those details are not available, but some are. And they're going to enhance E3 to allow E3 and Cloud PBX. So for my nonprofit friends, it's possible that now instead of E3 OpEx and then CapEx Plus, there now may be a different way for you to license your product. I'm sure it's coming. E4 is going away. There's going to be a lot more changes coming to Office 365, and all that will be shook out pretty quickly. I had a quick question. I'll go ahead and address it here. What about call recording? That's a great question. Natively, you cannot do person-to-person call recording. You can call record a conference. So if more than 2 people are in that call, technically that's now a conference, and the underlying architecture and the MCUs that handle that call, you can record that. There are many recording capabilities with third parties. Clarity Connect might be one, or maybe Interactive Intelligence. Audio Codes has a great product called SmartTap that allows you to record calls, either at the gateway level or peer-to-peer. So call recording is available, it's just not as native to the product. Which then takes us into a demo. I am not going to show you everything. I don't have time for it, and I will bore you to tears, and you've heard me talk already for nearly an hour. But I think it's good for you to see a client. I'm going to talk to you about the control panel. I'll talk to you about the topology that actually defines what all this looks like, and we'll look briefly at the PowerShell. I don't want to spend too much time there. It's good for you to know that Everything that you want to do can be done inside PowerShell. Most of what you want to do can be done by the control panel. Like good Microsoft people, I'm sure over the last few years you've been becoming experts at PowerShell. But for those of you that still like to point and click, like me, there's a control panel where you can do most of what you want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end my PowerPoint slide, and I'm going to drag over a window. This is my Skype for Business client. I'll put it in the middle. This doesn't seem crazy exciting, but what you should know is that everything I need for day-to-day use of Skype for Business is here. I can make phone calls. I can join meetings. I can IM and see people's presence, the red, yellow, green status. This is my product. So briefly from top to bottom, the top is a social area that we can use to put in notes. For example, apparently Andrew had a storm of whoppers in a basket thrown at him a couple days ago. Using different ways to communicate, you can tell where people are, what office they were in last. And apparently Brent Earls hates me. And then you never know what people might say in here. Dave Rocky likes to have 30-second dance parties. Dominique Mitchell is out of office. That's interesting to know. So inside her Exchange Outlook, she sent an out-of-office message. So now Skype for Business knows that, makes her purple, and lets me know that she's out of office. And of course, Don is being really nice to me, so I guess I'll pay you later, Don. Thank you. I appreciate that. Don's in a meeting right now. We know he's in a meeting because it says in a meeting. But what if he's not in a meeting? Well, technically he might not be in that meeting. But according to his Outlook calendar, he's supposed to be in a meeting. Hello, built-in accountability. I like it. This is my contact list. I can add people inside my organization. You just happen to see that all Mirazon employees with this icon is a distribution group. So as people are hired and fired, this automatically populates all those people. I can keep track and add people as a favorite. If I add them as a favorite, it does some cool things with my integration with a plastic phone. With my Polycom phone, it puts them as a quick button. So when I made Brent a favorite, which now I'm having to second guess this whole hate thing here, but if I add him as a favorite, now I have a quick dial button for Brent and anybody else that you see in here. There's this neat thing here called relationships. I can turn somebody into a colleague, which is native. These are people inside my organization. Or I can make them a work group. You notice that Daryl Hunter 2 is part of my work group. That means Daryl Hunter 2, that guy that sits over here to my right, Daryl Hunter 2 can now interrupt me if I'm in Do Not Disturb status. The reason I mention that is you might be thinking, what if you are Do Not Disturb, for example, you can see right here I'm Do Not Disturb, but what if I really need to get you? Well, you can come to my desk and pound on my door, but I probably would not answer. Or if I make you part of my work group, like Barry, change privacy relationship, work group, notice that it says share my note, location, all my contact information, and they can interrupt Do Not Disturb status. Great responsibility. Make sure you're being wise with who you give that status to. You'll also notice real quick that I have other contacts down here that are part of different organizations. These are federated organizations. We federate with a number of organizations. Some of these are linked to Lync. Some of these are Skype for Business. Some of these are XMPP using Jabber OpenFire. Some of these are Skype Consumer. It's good for you to know that inside my one consolidated contact list, I can add people and talk to them. I mentioned to you before that sometimes I work with my partners and I can grab them directly from here. Next window over is persistent chat. I didn't talk about that today, kind of on purpose. It's an odd topic. Persistent chat is a way for you to enter a room, have an important chat conversation, go away, come back later, and see what everybody said while you were gone. You might like this for Scrum meetings. You might like this in case your organization works across time zones and someone might be working while you're sleeping and vice versa. Now you can get caught up on what's happening. Or you hire somebody new and you want them to catch up on the project. You can put them in a persistent chat room and now they can catch up and see what happened before they got hired. Next tab over is my conversation history. Technically, this conversation history is stored inside Outlook. Drew wanted to know what time the webinar was today. Russ needed me last night or a couple days ago. Brent was asking me a few days ago if I'm going to lunch and want to make sure we remember Brendan. It's just nice for me to know what conversations have taken place recently, what I've missed, what calls have taken place recently. This is nice to know inside this one piece of software instead of having to look at several different places. Of course, I can make phone calls. Am I going to use my mouse and actually click buttons and do this? No, I'm not. I'm going to use my keyboard and type. But directly from here, I can check my voicemail. I can change my greetings. If I had voicemail, it would show up here like on your iPhone or Android as visual voicemail. If I wanted to adjust my call forwarding or simultaneous ring status, I could do that all directly from this client. I wanted to forward calls to my cell phone or simultaneously ring my cell phone. Or maybe I just didn't want you to be able to call me. I wanted all my calls to go straight to voicemail. Wouldn't that be convenient sometimes? I can do that directly from this client. Likewise, I can change audio devices. I don't have anything plugged in right now, but if I have my headset, my Jabra or my Plantronics or my Sennheiser or whatever I might have, or even if I'm using Better Together with a phone, it would show up here as an audio device for me to be able to handle. Next tab over is my meetings. These are things pulled directly from my Outlook calendar. And if you notice, one of them is green. This was a Skype meeting. If you set up a meeting as a Skype for Business meeting or as a Lync meeting, for those of you that might still be using Lync, now it's green or it's blue on purpose. I can right-click on it and join it directly from here. I don't have to go to Outlook and find it and click on the link. I can right-click and join it from here. Again, this is one client I can keep up and use all day long. And then, of course, you've got all sorts of options. Inside here, you can adjust how I want my contact list to appear. For example, my contact list could populate with pictures. I've chosen not to do that. But maybe I don't want to see pictures, and maybe I don't want to take so many lines up. I can change that to show contact name only, and now you can see how it looks different. I have names and status, but it takes up less space, so I can see more people at a time on my screen. Anything you can imagine inside the options you can change. You can adjust your phone ringing. You can adjust your audio device. You can adjust your video device. You can adjust where files are saved. There's lots of things that you can do inside of here. I'm going to keep it high level for there. I don't want to go too much further because I know that we're approaching our time. But I want to jump in my server. This is my server, SRV RTC04. I'm going to go a little bit out of order on purpose. We're going to start with my topology. This is how my Skype for Business environment is defined. I don't have any Lync 2010 servers. I don't have any Lync 2013 servers. But I do have Skype for Business 2015. I have a standard edition server and a bunch of information that you can know about that, of how I'm enabling things, what my name is, what my fully qualified domain name is for my Active Directory domain, where things inside SQL are, blah, blah, blah. All of that is defined inside a topology. When you define everything inside a topology, including your edge pools and IP addresses, including NAT IP addresses for audio video edge services, when you identify things like your PSTN gateways, for example, this one is a Sonos gateway, this one's an audio codes gateway, both of which are perfectly valid in my environment to make and receive phone calls for high availability. When you identify all of this, Microsoft stores all of this inside a database. So when I click Topology, Publish, I'm technically publishing this topology inside my CMS. My central management store keeps track of all of this definition. It says I can't change deleted objects because I'm not an enterprise admin. That's an OK noise error. Once it does what it needs to do here for publishing all this information, it then replicates to all Skype for Business servers. It does this on purpose because it wants to make sure that in case one server goes down, everything still works. So inside my management shell, I may want to know if replication is complete. Nope, it's not. It's false, false. At 11:04, which was a minute ago or a few seconds ago, I published a new topology. So it'll take a little bit for that to replicate, and now it's true, true. This is a way for me through PowerShell to know whether my replication 1 is done, but in case that didn't go true, true, and it stayed true, false, or false, false, I got a problem, and I got to go figure out how to solve that. That's some things you can do inside Shell. You can also do things like this and get specific information about users. Maybe I want to know more information about me. I'm Daryl Hunter. But it might be better for me instead to use the control panel for that. This might be a little more familiar for you. Inside my user environment, I can search for myself. Here's Daryl. And I can see a whole bunch of information about me, including my number and my extension. But this does not show my direct inward dial number. because I handle direct inward dial numbers differently. But inside this control panel, I can work with users. I can understand the status of my topology. I can work with voice routing, and I want to see perhaps how I'm handling using regular expressions inbound phone service, or maybe how I'm handling phone normalization, taking numbers that I digit on a phone and normalize those to something different. Maybe I want to work with response groups. Response groups is a fancy term to handle things like hunt groups. That's where you can handle things like this. There's a group of people that are put inside of a queue that are then put inside of a workflow to be able to handle phone information. Or maybe I'm running Polycom phones or HP phones, and I want, or maybe even other three-party phones, and want to upgrade firmware on those devices. This is where I can keep track of firmware versions and approve them and add new versions and cancel updates and edit what version of firmware people are allowed to use. In the network environment, I can adjust things like policies. I can identify things like subnets. That way it automatically populates things like location. For more advanced things like E911, I want to make sure for ELIN that the appropriate identification for a 911 call goes to the PSAP in the right location. Much of that can be done here, but then of course there's third-party information tools like maybe 911 Enable, or maybe your audio code's ELIN gateway to handle things like that. This is the brief version of the control panel. Again, the control panel can do almost anything. PowerShell can do everything. And all of this is defined by your topology. Those are the moving parts of what your Skype for Business infrastructure looks like. I'm going to take it back quickly to my slideshow. And I think that wraps it up. We're about 8 minutes over. We got a few minutes for questions and answers. If you guys have any, it looks like there might have been one in there while we were talking. Brenda, does the mobile client work exactly the same? Yes, the mobile client works the same today. Technically, I think there's a Skype for Business client. It's either for Android or Windows Phone that's already out, but iPhone and then the other one, whatever the other one is still the Lync 2013 client. Yes, it still works the same. Then I've also got a question. Forgive me. My fonts are really low. I apologize. Hey, sweet. The new monitor. Since conversations are stored in Outlook, this would affect your Outlook mailbox size, correct? I'm curious because users are already bad about deleting stuff. Yes, Elizabeth, you're exactly right. So check this out. Not only are Outlook conversations stored in messages stored in Outlook, but you also need to think through now they're now subject to maybe an electronic retention policy you might have, because that's now a message put inside your mailbox. So yes, that's where they're stored. You can see it causing a problem. We've been having it here we've been having Lync here since January 4th, 2011. Every single conversation I've ever had inside Lync is stored inside that folder. And I believe last time I checked, that was 180 megs. So in my world, that's not a lot. In your world, 180 megs might be a ton of data. So your mileage may vary, but yes, you're exactly right, Elizabeth. Those conversations are stored in Outlook. But you can turn that off. There are policies and ways to disable that. So in case you want to not have to deal with that for electronic retention, or you don't want to have to store it, yes, absolutely, you can certainly do that. Let me see if there's any more. One more, Brenda. I already answered Brenda's. Call recording on-prem only. It's a great question, Mark. I don't know the answer. I've only known about call recording on premises. I'm guessing you're probably asking if you run the workload online using Cloud PBX, could I then record that call? I'm certain you could. You'd probably, instead of having to use a gateway, let me back up. Instead of using a product that does maybe like a port mirror and it's through networking and then ships all that data over to a call recording software, you technically won't be able to do that, right? Because that call is coming into a gateway on the Microsoft UC Cloud or Cloud PBX. But inside an on-premises environment, and now probably potentially through Cloud PBX, you can add what's called a trusted application server. And a trusted application server now allows not only those inbound and outbound calls, but also peer-to-peer calls to be recorded. So will you be able to add a call recording piece of software or plugin to Cloud PBX? Probably. I would be surprised if the answer is no. Microsoft's really wanting you to implement this product. They want you to replace your legacy PBX with their solution. They have a great partner ecosystem. I'm pretty confident that partners are already playing with this and using this and testing this. I just don't know the answer. And you're welcome, no problem. And I think that's it. Thank you for letting us go 12 minutes past our time. It's been great talking to you. Again, this was the Microsoft UC experience. My name is Daryl Hunter. My email is on your screen. My Skype for Business Open Federated SIP URI is also on your screen. And you can always catch me on Twitter at Daryl Hunter. We also have a link to our Mirazon blog. I'm one of our authors. I write on our blog. We have many of our engineers that populate our blog. I think we post twice a week, if not more often. So please come check us out. We'd love to be able to help you. Thanks again for your time today. Bye-bye.